The name H.H. Holmes echoes through the corridors of criminal history. A chill runs down the spine when his name is uttered. He is a spectre of the Gilded Age. Holmes is a stark reminder that darkness can lurk beneath a veneer of progress. His story is not for the faint of heart. It is a descent into the abyss of human cruelty. Herman Webster Mudgett, the man who would become H.H. Holmes, was born into a seemingly ordinary world. He was raised in a small town. His family was respectable, yet even in his youth, there were glimpses of the darkness that would consume him. Some whispered of a disturbing fascination with death. Others noted a cold, calculating nature beneath his charming exterior. Holmes was a bright student. He possessed a sharp intellect, but he seemed drawn to deceit and manipulation. He embraced aliases, crafting new identities as easily as others changed clothes. This was a harbinger of the elaborate deceptions that would mark his later life. Driven by ambition and shrouded in secrets, Holmes sought to make his mark on the world. He gravitated towards the burgeoning metropolis of Chicago. The city, teeming with opportunity and anonymity, provided the perfect hunting ground for a predator like Holmes. The city's rapid growth and chaotic atmosphere masked his sinister intentions. The seeds of true evil were sown with the construction of his infamous murder castle. This was no ordinary building. It was a labyrinth of hidden rooms and secret passages. Holmes designed this macabre edifice to trap and dispose of his victims. Each floor held a new horror. Gas chambers, trapdoors, and soundproofed rooms became tools in his deadly arsenal. Inside the murder castle, Holmes played God. He controlled every aspect of his victims' final moments. He reveled in their terror, their pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears. His motives transcended mere greed. He seemed to derive a twisted pleasure from the act of killing itself. Word spread through the city's underbelly of disappearances tied to the enigmatic Dr. Holmes. His charm and charisma became a lure, drawing unsuspecting souls into his web of death. Each victim brought Holmes closer to infamy. Each death painted another stroke on the canvas of his dark legacy. Herman Webster Mudgett, a name lost to the annals of time, replaced by the chilling moniker H.H. Holmes. Born in New Hampshire in 1861, his early life held hints of the darkness to come. A bright child, but prone to fits of morbid curiosity, he harbored a fascination with death, a macabre interest that set him apart from other children. Rumors circulated of young Holmes torturing animals. A darkness lurked beneath his innocent facade. Some whispered of a chilling coldness in his eyes. He seemed to lack empathy, a crucial element of the human experience. His troubled mind found solace in isolation. His family life provided little solace. His father, a strict and religious man, clashed with Holmes's rebellious nature. Discipline was harsh, often bordering on cruel. This only served to fuel Holmes's resentment and anger. His already fragile psyche was further eroded. As Holmes grew older, his intelligence became apparent. He excelled in his studies, particularly in science and anatomy. This thirst for knowledge, however, took a sinister turn. He developed a morbid fascination with the human body. His interest was not in healing, but in dissecting and understanding the fragility of life. He enrolled in medical school, drawn to the power it represented. Here he could indulge his darkest impulses. He stole cadavers, dissecting them with a chilling detachment. He honed his skills, learning the intricacies of the human form. His goal was not to preserve life, but to master death. Holmes's moral compass, if he ever possessed one, shattered during these years. He saw patients not as people, but as subjects. He experimented with poisons, fascinated by their ability to extinguish life. His descent into madness was gradual, insidious. Driven by greed and a lust for power, Holmes turned to fraud and deception. He was a master manipulator, able to assume different identities with ease. He preyed on the vulnerable, using his charm and intelligence to gain their trust. Each successful con fueled his arrogance. He drifted across state lines, leaving a trail of broken lives in his wake. His crimes escalated from petty theft to insurance fraud. Each act pushed him closer to the precipice. He reveled in the thrill of the con, the knowledge that he was smarter, more cunning than those around him. Holmes became a phantom, a whisper of a man, constantly changing his name and appearance. He was always one step ahead of the law, his true nature hidden behind a veil of deceit. The seeds of a monster had been sown, and now they were ready to bloom. Chicago, a city on the rise, a bustling hub of commerce and industry. But beneath the veneer of progress, a darkness festered. At the corner of 63rd and Wallace, a sinister edifice rose. The locals called it the Castle. Its imposing facade hid a macabre secret. This was no ordinary building. It was H.H. Holmes's masterpiece of evil. The Murder Castle, as it would be known, was a labyrinthine structure. Holmes designed it with a chilling purpose to ensnare and exterminate. Behind its ornate doors lay a maze of secret passages and hidden rooms. Soundproofed chambers muffled the screams of his victims. Gas jets, controlled from Holmes's own room, could transform any space into a lethal gas chamber. The building itself became an accomplice. It was a silent witness to unspeakable horrors. Workmen came and went, unaware of the building's true purpose. Holmes, ever the manipulator, played the part of the eccentric entrepreneur, deflecting suspicion with a smile and a handshake. Labyrinths of deception. Holmes lured his victims to the Murder Castle with promises of cheap rent and employment. Many were young women, drawn to the city in search of a better life. They would meet their end, not in the bustling streets, but within the cold, calculating walls of Holmes's creation. Once inside, they became his to control. He furnished the rooms with sinister intent. Some had hidden peepholes, allowing Holmes to spy on his unsuspecting prey. Others were lined with asbestos and steel plates, turning them into virtual ovens. Trapdoors sent victims plummeting into soundproof basement vaults. The air itself seemed thick with dread. The Murder Castle was a testament to Holmes's twisted genius. It was a physical manifestation of his warped psyche, a place where his darkest fantasies became reality. He moved through its corridors like a phantom, his victims none the wiser until it was too late. Instruments of terror. Holmes's methods were as varied as they were gruesome. He experimented on his victims, reveling in their suffering. He used surgical instruments with chilling precision. Bones were found with surgical precision, evidence of his macabre fascination with anatomy. His medical knowledge, once a pursuit of healing, became a tool of torture. Bodies were disposed of in a massive kiln, erasing all traces. Quicklime and acid baths dissolved flesh and bone. Holmes kept souvenirs of his gruesome work, trinkets of death that served as trophies of his reign of terror. A lock of hair, a piece of jewelry, grim reminders of the lives extinguished within those walls. The smell of death permeated the murder castle. It seeped into the very foundation, a constant reminder of the horrors that unfolded within its walls. Holmes, however, remained unmoved. He was a man devoid of empathy, his heart a cold, empty void. The Shadow of the World's Fair. The year 1893 saw Chicago host the World's Columbian Exposition, a dazzling spectacle of progress and innovation. Millions flocked to the city, eager to witness the marvels on display. But for Holmes, the World's Fair was not a celebration but an opportunity. The influx of visitors provided a steady stream of potential victims, ripe for the picking. He presented himself as a charming entrepreneur, offering lodging in his castle to unsuspecting travelers. Many met their end within those walls, their disappearances lost in the chaos of the bustling city. The World's Fair, meant to symbolize hope and progress, cast a long shadow over Holmes's deeds. As the fair drew to a close, so too did Holmes's reign of terror in Chicago. He fled the city, leaving behind a legacy of death and despair. The murder castle stood silent, its secrets buried deep within its walls, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of civilization. The World's Fair had faded into memory, leaving behind echoes of wonder and, in its wake, a city grappling with unsettling whispers. The grandeur of the White City couldn't entirely mask the growing unease. People had vanished, swallowed by the burgeoning metropolis, their absences explained away as the anonymity of city life. Yet a persistent disquiet lingered, a sense that something was amiss. Holmes, ever the phantom, had moved on, his trail of deceit stretching across state lines, but the echoes of his crimes followed. In Philadelphia, he continued his gruesome work, his methods growing bolder, his disregard for human life absolute. He seemed to revel in the cat-and-mouse game with authorities, always one step ahead. Then a twist of fate, a misstep in his elaborate schemes. An insurance scam involving a staged death began to unravel. Holmes had grown overconfident, his arrogance blinding him to the meticulous nature of investigators hot on his trail. The net was closing in, the shadows of justice lengthening. Detective Geyer, a tenacious investigator with a reputation for unraveling the most intricate deceptions, took on the case. He possessed a keen eye for detail, an unyielding determination to uncover the truth. He began piecing together the fragments of Holmes's life, following the threads of his lies across state lines. Geyer discovered a pattern, a trail of aliases, fraudulent claims, and most disturbingly, a string of disappearances that all led back to Holmes. His investigation led him to the doorstep of the murder castle in Chicago. The building, now vacant, stood as a silent testament to Holmes's depravity. Inside those walls, Geyer uncovered the horrifying truth. Secret passages, hidden rooms, and instruments of torture painted a gruesome picture of Holmes's crimes. The murder castle was no longer a mere building. It was a crypt, a monument to unimaginable cruelty. The sheer scope of Holmes's crimes shocked even the most hardened investigator. With mounting evidence, Geyer relentlessly pursued Holmes. The chase took him across the country, each step revealing another layer of Holmes's deceit. Telegrams flew back and forth, a desperate race against time to apprehend a killer who seemed to vanish into thin air. But Geyer refused to be deterred. He knew that Holmes's arrogance would be his downfall. Finally, in a Boston jail cell, Holmes was apprehended. He had been captured for yet another insurance scam, a petty crime compared to the horrors he had orchestrated. But for Gaia, it was the break he needed. The walls were closing in, the weight of his crimes finally catching up with him. Holmes, ever the cunning manipulator, attempted to maintain his innocence. He spun tales, weaving elaborate lies to obfuscate the truth. But Gaia had seen through his facade. He confronted Holmes with the overwhelming evidence, the physical reminders of his gruesome deeds. Faced with the undeniable, Holmes confessed. But his confession was not one of remorse or regret. Instead, it was a chillingly detached account of his crimes, a boastful recitation of his cunning and cruelty. He seemed to relish in the horror he had inflicted, his ego inflated by the notoriety he had achieved. Holmes's trial became a media sensation. Newspapers across the country recounted his crimes in gruesome detail, painting him as a monster in human form. The public was both captivated and repulsed, drawn to the macabre spectacle of his trial. He became a perverse celebrity, his name synonymous with evil. Even in the face of his impending doom, Holmes remained unrepentant. He showed no remorse for the lives he had taken, the families he had destroyed. He was a void, a black hole of humanity. His confession, devoid of any shred of remorse, solidified his place in history as one of America's most notorious killers. The murder castle itself became an object of morbid fascination. Crowds gathered outside its imposing doors, peering into its darkened windows as if hoping to catch a glimpse of the evil that had transpired within. The building, once a symbol of Holmes's twisted ambition, was now a grim monument to his crimes. Stories of Holmes's victims, pieced together from fragmented evidence and whispered rumors, only added to the growing legend. Young women lured to the city with promises of opportunity, only to meet their end at the hands of a cunning predator. Their stories, tragic and haunting, resonated with a nation grappling with the dark side of progress. The case sparked a national conversation about the nature of evil, the dangers lurking beneath the veneer of civilization. Holmes became a cautionary tale, a reminder that darkness could lurk behind the most charming facade. His crimes exposed the vulnerabilities of a rapidly changing society, one where ambition and anonymity could mask even the most sinister intentions. Despite the overwhelming evidence and his own confession, doubts lingered. The full extent of Holmes's crimes, the true number of his victims, remained a mystery. The murder castle, demolished shortly after Holmes's arrest, took its secrets to the grave. The lack of closure only fueled speculation, ensuring that the legend of H.H. Holmes would endure. The case also exposed the limitations of the criminal justice system. Holmes, a master manipulator, had exploited loopholes and inconsistencies to evade capture for years. His trial, though a media spectacle, did little to answer the questions that lingered in the public's mind. Even in death, Holmes cast a long shadow. His body, encased in a cement casket and buried in an unmarked grave, at his request became a macabre curiosity, a pilgrimage site for those seeking a tangible connection to the legend. The fascination with true crime, ignited in part by the Holmes case, continues to this day, a testament to the enduring power of evil to both horrify and fascinate. The echoes of H.H. Holmes's reign of terror reverberate even now, more than a century after his demise. His name, once whispered in fear, is etched in the annals of criminal history, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can fester beneath a veneer of normalcy. The murder castle, though reduced to rubble, continues to haunt the American psyche, a macabre symbol of the depravity lurking beneath the surface of society. Holmes's legacy is a complex one, a study in contrasts. He was a monster, driven by greed, ambition, and a chilling lack of empathy. Yet he was also a product of his time, a period of rapid social and technological change where ambition often outpaced morality. The anonymity of the burgeoning metropolis provided fertile ground for his brand of evil to flourish. The trial, a media spectacle that captivated the nation, revealed not only the dark potential of the human heart, but also the insatiable appetite for sensationalism that fueled the burgeoning tabloid press. Holmes, ever the showman, played his part to perfection, further blurring the lines between reality and the macabre narrative spun by the newspapers. The murder castle itself has become a cultural touchstone, a morbidly fascinating example of architecture as a tool of evil. Its labyrinthine corridors, hidden rooms, and gruesome contraptions have inspired countless books, films, and nightmares. The building, once a symbol of Holmes's twisted ambition, now serves as a post office today, but its original basement still sends chilling reminder of the vulnerability of innocence in the face of cunning and calculation. The case also left an indelible mark on the field of criminal investigation. The meticulous documentation of the murder castle's horrors, the pursuit of Holmes across state lines, and the use of forensic evidence all contributed to the development of the modern criminal profiling and investigation techniques. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of H.H. Holmes is the stark reminder that evil can wear many faces. It can lurk behind a charming smile, a disarming wit, and a veneer of respectability. The murder castle may be gone, but the shadows it casts continue to linger, a cautionary tale whispered across generations, a reminder to never underestimate the darkness that resides within the human heart. Stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button. You won't want to miss our next video here on The Dark Chronicles True Lies.